Hello, I'm Emma of Granola Gear, and I'm so excited to be chatting with you again today about what I have been knitting on lately. I'm so excited to be back with you. I filmed a podcast the other week, and then I realized when I went to edit it a week later that there was no sound after the first minute. So we did my spring plans video last week, and now here we are, and I have more to show you than last time, anyways. I'm actually kind of glad it happened because I felt like I had been showing the same couple pieces week after week for a while, but now I have a new cast on and I have two finished projects because I was in the four whip cycle in the past, and that really I've learned does not work well for me. I can do it, but I like to keep all of my projects moving. Not because I feel like I need to finish stuff constantly, but just if something lingers for too long without getting worked on, then it kind of goes to the back of my mind and it ends up staying in a pile and then it never gets finished. And that's okay. It's just the part of the joy for me, a lot of the joy for me is finishing something. If I don't finish it, then it's like a stress thing. I have maybe one or two lingering whips that I haven't finished that are sitting somewhere, but they're not really significant. I don't like having piles of them. At that point, I may as well just frog them. So 3 whips is enough for me that I can maybe spend more time than I can either rotate them evenly or I can spend more time on one of them. And when I spend more time on one of them, I'm not totally um, totally forgetting about the others. 4, if I spend more time on one, the other 2 are getting totally forgotten about. So 3 is my ideal cycle. But before we get into that, I will tell you what I'm wearing, and that is the Maggie Vest by Petite Knit. I knit this in Jody Long Chow, which is a DK weight superwash in the color Midnight. So this nice navy with these cute little buttons. I love this piece. I wear it on occasion. I wouldn't say it's hard to style, but like in her samples, she's wearing it as a tank top, and like that's not gonna happen for me. I'm not gonna wear a woolly vest as a tank with no shirt underneath, but I think this works pretty well. Sometimes I do it with a turtleneck, sometimes I do a collared shirt. I don't have as many collared shirts as I would like, but I think a no collared shirt under the vest works just as well. It's a fun piece, very classic, and I love it. So let's get into finished objects. The first one I will show you is a gift knit, which actually we're going to pause really quick and I'm going to tell you a little bit about a gift knit I finished previously. Just I want to show you the photo. I semi recently finished a gift knit for my youngest brother. It's an all over colorwork sweater, drops 5219A. And I posted in the video where it was a finished object a video of me trying it on, but I have a picture now of him trying it on. So I'll put those on the screen so you can enjoy. It's knit in Drops Charisma, a DK weight yarn. He loves it. It's very cute. I used a vintage clasp that I found on eBay for not eBay, Etsy for the top part. And I did little hooks and eyes below that so you can't see them. And it fits him really nicely. And I'm very happy with it. Okay, so finished object for this week. I knit for my other brother, my middle brother, a slightly less crazy sweater because he is not as crazy with his fashion choices. We wanted to do something simpler for him that he will actually get wear out of. So me, him, and his girlfriend, who is also a knitter, agreed upon this piece, and that is the Journeyman Jumper by Knitwits and Yarns. I knit it in a worsted weight yarn. It's on 4.5 millimeter needles. It's the Hobie Friends 100% wool in the color dark denim. I really like this because it's not quite a navy. I'm not a big navy fan. And it just has this cabling on the top. And there's none on the back, which I didn't know until I read the pattern. I thought that there would be cabling on the back. There's not. This was supposed to be knit in panels. I knit it all the way in the round. I knit the sleeves in the round. I just was not going to knit a sweater this big in panels. It's drop shoulder, so it is actually significantly wider than I would like it to be. I'm a little concerned about how this is going to look on him. This is a men's large, but this is really wide. And honestly, he's a pretty narrow dude. He's got big shoulders and he's pretty large, but he's not like this large. I maybe, if I had realized that, would have sized down a size or two and then just made it longer for him. I'm not super psyched at how wide this is. But we'll have him try it on, and then if I really need to mod it, I can do that. Which, in addition to making it in the round, I did one or two things. For one, I did a folded collar on the top here. The pattern had you leave the stitches here live, and leave them to pick up for the knitting the collar at the end, and the same for the back ones. But I felt that because that wouldn't give it much structure with just a single, it's not a bound off edge that you're picking up stitches and knitting the collar from that. That bound off edge gives it a little more structure at the neck so it doesn't pull apart too much. So I did pick those up, and I picked up stitches on the side like it says, and I knit the collar, but I knit it double the length, and then I folded it in and knit it down, and that knit down edge gives it more structure than it would otherwise, which I think is good for this because it's a big sweater. I don't want it to pull too much. The shoulder seam gives it some structure too, but I just, like, I've knit men's sweaters in the past at the arm, not the neck hole is kind of big, and I just wanted to make sure it stayed cinched in, but it looks really nice. I think it gives it, I like a good folded collar. It just looks good, I think, in my personal opinion. These sleeves are supposed to be knit flat, but I knit them in the round, like I said. But what I did, because the flat piece was supposed to be like, so you start at the bottom, the cuff, you knit up, you do increases, and then at the top, there's a bit of a cap because you stagger the bind off. So I actually translated that into short rows, and then I did short rows at the top of the sleeve before I started knitting to give it the same amount of like drop or angle that little angled cap would give you. So that worked out pretty well. But yeah, we'll see how this looks on him. I'll put in a video of it on me. It's pretty big. I mean, he's bigger than me, obviously, but like, he's not crazy big. He's like over 6 feet tall, but tall doesn't mean with guys that your torso is necessarily this wide, which is actually something that another knitter that I know has run into. Like, she's knit 2 sweaters for her husband, and both of them were really big in the body. And my husband actually has recently informed him that his Moby is kind of bigger in the body than you would like because they're all drop shoulders. I just don't necessarily think that drop shoulders are suited to most men. I don't think most men are used to like the drop shoulder construction. I think especially if guys have bigger shoulders, and the pattern is calling for them to wear a larger size, then they have a narrower like chest area or waist, it ends up looking really billowy on them. So just keep that in mind. Trying to think if I changed anything else. Yeah, I kind of talked about the charts on previous ones, but I did on all the edges for the ribbing, I did do double knitting before I bound off an Italian bind off, and I did like a, what is it, the old Norwegian cast on for the bottom. It just gives it a little more tightness, especially in something that's so big. But this yarn is really nicely bouncy. This is the first time I've ever used Hobby Friends, and I really liked it. It's a pretty smooth yarn. It doesn't feel too itchy. I think I talked about this in the video that didn't record sound, but I wish there was a better scale for the feel of yarn. It's kind of a little objective. You have all these words like rustic and toothy, and like, what does that mean? Like, where is that on the scale? So in my head, the scale just for wools, not other fibers, because that's kind of a whole different thing, on the scale of like super fine merino superwash versus, and on the other end we've got like Jamieson's of Shetland, like a Shetland yarn that's like really quite ouchy that you don't want right against your skin. That's the scale. In the middle we've got like, see it, Cascade 220 non-superwash, pretty like rough but not super rough. This is probably a little bit nicer, a little bit softer than the Cascade 220. Not nearly as rough as something like a Drops Alaska, or what else? But it's softer, it's finer, it's spun pretty nicely, it's plied. But I think this is a really nice style. I like the men's sweaters that have the texture on the top. It's not too overwhelming, and it's easier for them to wear if they're not like crazy fashionable. So that is that. That's the first finished object I have. The next one, I don't think I have quite as much to say as I did about that one, is the Tulip Loop vest by Other Loops. I'm so happy with this. I haven't, as I'm filming this, I haven't tried this on. I will try it on for the video, and if I need to, I will talk about it in that video. But this is literally just finished blocking. So this is a Tulip Loop vest. It's an Aran weight pattern, knit on also 4.5 millimeter needles, which I'm so happy I don't have like 3 things on 4.5s at the same time now. What else? Oh, I knit this in an unraveled sweater yarn that was 60% merino, 15% cashmere, 15% angora, and 10% nylon. That's kind of like, I feel like commercial sweater yarns are either 100% wool. They only have like, they are like all synthetic and then have like 10% wool, or there's like this strange, I've seen a lot of older sweaters that have like this little bit of cashmere and angora and nylon in with a bunch of wool, which is really interesting. It's very soft, not scratchy at all. The nylon must make it pretty durable, but I really love how this turned out. um I'm like quite happy with it. I was happy that I used almost all of my yarn. I actually held it double because it wasn't quite thick enough on its own. And I broke into the last skein, but I didn't use the whole thing. Because that's like, you can't control how much you have when you unravel a sweater. So I try to pick something that's going to be used pretty much the whole quantity. I can use what's left over and I will, but I don't want to be left with like a ton. So yeah, I love this. I love the staghorn cables. I love how they come in like that. I love the split hem that's a little bit longer in the back. Yeah, there's no edging on the edges here. Just you slip every other end stitch. Which, just a note for the neckline, if you're knitting this for the shoulder portions, like these portions before you join all the way in the round, I would not slip every other inside stitch on this, like where the neckline's supposed to be, because I was like, oh, I'm slipping these because I need less stitches to pick up in when I do the neckline. That must be it. But that wasn't the case. I actually needed to pick up more more stitches on the edge than were easily picked up, because the slip stitches basically cut the number of edge stitches in half. So I had to like go in and pull it up through a more awkward place. So I just don't think it makes sense to do it on this side, which it's probably easier to just say to do it on both sides. But if you want to get technical about it and you want to save yourself a little trouble or make it a little easier, don't slip the stitches here and here. What else? Oh, I think the pattern said this stitch a little incorrectly. Um, it's like a center double decrease, CDD, and the pattern calls it a CSD, which is a centered single decrease, but that's not what this is. So I did a CDD if you read it and you don't understand. And the last thing was, you do double knitting on the edge before you bind off. And when I did that, I did do an extra CDD when I did the double knitting rows, just on one of the two double knitting rows. Because otherwise it wouldn't have been knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl all the way around. It would have been knit, knit, knit right in this center one. But it turned out really nicely. I'm really happy with it. It's pretty dense actually, which is fine with me. I'm happy to have another vest. This is like my second V-neck vest. So that'll be nice for the office. It's so cute. It's such a good color. I'm psyched about it. It was a lot of ends to weave in, but it turned out really well. And I will say, part of the reason I knit the vest was because in the other tulip loop patterns, which I do really like, the staghorn cables do this same V thing, but in the back, and I didn't like that. So I did the vest that doesn't have that. So I'm actually going to give you a teeny bit of try-on commentary with this guy. I really like this. I really like how it turned out. I think once I blocked it, the fabric bloomed really nicely. But it is a little bit short. With a truly high-waisted pant, it's not that bad. I don't know if you can tell on the side. I don't have my shirt tucked in because this isn't really a tuckable shirt. It looks nice in the back. I think the armholes look really clean, even though they don't have an added edge. I am definitely going to block this again and like truly pin it out. I think if I pin it out and give it a little bit more drape, it'll be better. Pull it a little bit longer because it just needs like, I don't know, half an inch. And the fabric is dense enough that I think there is enough of it to spread and still be a good fabric. Yeah, it's just, I've worn this to work twice, and both times I felt a little like, ugh, this is kind of small, mostly in length. Because as you can see, the back of the split hem, hopefully you can see, is a little bit longer. And I just felt like I guess the top of that split hem right there, that's like barely at the top of these. They're not super high-waisted pants, but like they are high-waisted. Like my belly button is right where the button is. So I did, like, I made the smallest size, and this was the length for the smallest size, but I don't think, I don't think she gives lengths. Maybe she did. But she tells you to knit to a certain number of cables, and I was like, maybe it's a little under, but we'll do the ribbing and then I'll see how I feel after that. And at this point I don't really want to go back and make it longer, but I definitely think I can block it out and it'll be fine. I'm just gonna pin it and block it a little bit more. It is what it is, but I really like this color. I think the neckline's really nice. I have found that a really light colored vest like this is actually a lot easier to wear than I wore my Euro slip over all the time. It's like a light brown. But I have a dark brown one that's pretty easy to wear. And then I have a dark blue Maggie vest. And I just feel like it's harder to find something to go with it. But like a light blue like this goes with everything. Or maybe I just have more stuff that matches it. So I'm really a big fan overall. I think that the increases here look really nice. It's a very like hybrid, traditional, modern pattern, which is kind of what I like. So yeah, back's nice. So that is my second finished object. Now we will get into whips. And I will start with something that I don't know if I've made progress on since my last video, but I did block it, which I must have made progress because I'm thinking of the last video I filmed, which didn't work out. That's a champagne pullover by Sari Nordland. It's done on 3.5 millimeter needles and a DK weight yarn. This is Jagger spun, main line, 3/8 in the color Daffodil. I'm going to dye this red at the end because I do not like yellow. I blocked this out because I wanted to give myself a better sense of how big it was and how much longer I needed to go because I was not sure. And I definitely am going to need to work on the body a bit more. I haven't picked the stitches back up just because I haven't gotten around to it, but the lace and the cables look so much better like this. And I tried to block out the sleeves too. I did block them out so that the lace was flat, or I tried to, so that they would pull apart better. The sleeves might be a little short. I think when I do the final block for this, I'm really going to have to stretch a couple places because I think this is a little on the small side. I need to check my gauge again because I don't know. It feels like maybe it's a little small. It's either a little small or this is a second Sari Nordland pattern that hasn't been as boxy as I expected it to be. I will let you know. Second drop shoulder one. My two yoked Sari Nordland patterns that I've knit were both fine and what I expected them to be. I knit one other drop shoulder Sari Nordland pattern, the Colette tee, and that was narrower than I expected it to be. So I will check the gauge and I will let you know if that's my fault or if that's a pattern fault. But yeah, because of this getting blocked out wider, it does need to be longer. I'm gonna have to do more repeats. I think this possibly is the number of repeats she did in her sample. I'll go and look. I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty sure. So that's why I stopped and blocked here because I was like, oh, maybe I can start the ribbing now, but definitely not. I have a ways to go. I really like this motif. It just takes a long time. I can do like 5 or 6 rows at a time before I start to lose my mind a little bit. So it's not something that I crank on for a long time. But yeah, I was happy to take a little break with this. But it looks really good. I do really like how much the lace opened up. I think it's super pretty. And the cables lie so nicely. This is 100% wool, and it's just perfect for this. And all the stockinette that looked really bad before looks better. It still doesn't look perfect, but it looks a lot better. So I'm glad I did a textured knit with this because it was originally an April cardigan, if you remember, and I didn't like it. It didn't fit me well. So I frogged it. And I'm working off of the cone now, not off my frogged April cardigan. So that's really nice. The stitches look a lot better. That is that. I will do the other project that I have shown you before, and then I will get into my new cast on. And this is the Dagmar jacket by Petite Knit. Sorry if I keep bumping the mic. It's flopping around more than I wanted it to. So I think the last time I showed you this, I was working on the shoulder pieces. And I'm working on a sleeve now. I joined for the body and now I'm working on a sleeve. So what happened here was I accidentally knit this shoulder portion too small on both sides. And then on the second side, I was like, wait, this is not long enough. I did the same number of repeats on the back, but it actually needed to be a little bit longer. So I knit it, I kept going on the second one, I knit it longer, and then I went back to the first one, I knit that longer, but that meant that like when I joined in the round, I wasn't in the right place. So I ended up having to break my yarn more at the armpits than I wanted to go back to this piece so I could join it in the round correctly. And then I picked up stitches for the sleeve, and I've just been cranking on that. My hands are really hurting from all the texture that I've been knitting, but I feel a little bit better now, so I've been working on that. For the sleeves, I usually don't need to like use any kind of counter to tell what decrease I'm on, but with the dark color and the moss stitch, it was just too difficult. So I'm using my stitch counter thing from Etsy, and I'm marking them with the stitch markers so that I know how many I've done. And this, I don't think I mentioned, is in Drops Alaska, which is 100% wool in the color dark gray. I really like Drops Alaska. It's a nice sturdy rustic yarn. Knit 2 Moby sweaters in it, and I really like them both. And for a jacket, it felt like a really suitable yarn. I don't have buttons for this yet. I don't know what I'm going to do for buttons. I kind of have a hard time with buttons. I can never find ones that I like that are like not super expensive. The store near me only carries like Merchant Mills buttons that are so expensive. So I don't know. Let me know if you have any suggestions in the comments for where to get buttons, because I hate finding buttons. So yeah, the sleeve's getting less annoying to knit the smaller it gets. I'm not the biggest fan of knitting. Like, I don't mind knitting a whole thing of honeycomb, but knitting just one honeycomb at a time is kind of annoying. But it looks good. I really like this pattern. It may not get finished this year, but we're cranking. So that is that. And now my cast on. So excited about this. So I had gone to a fiber festival the other month, and I picked up one skein of this Bloom Woolens yarn, Solstice yarn. It is so beautiful, this like pinky purple. It's 90% wool, 10% mohair. It's supposed to be a light decay. I'd say it's maybe a fingering. And I decided to cast on the Pressed Flowers Shawl by Amy Christoffers, or Savory Knitting is her name. This skein is supposedly only has 352 yards in it. And I was hoping to use it for the main color, but that was like, the main color is supposed to use 550, and that was just too much. So I'm using this as a contrast color, which is only supposed to use 450. So it may be a bit smaller, and that's fine. And I'm using, for my main color, this unraveled 100% wool sweater yarn that is just this cream. It's very shiny. I'm holding it double because single was just too thin, and it's definitely like a pretty significant weight difference between these two. And so I was a little worried about that. I cast on, and I was like, we'll just see how it goes in the first little bit. And if it doesn't look good or it doesn't pop enough, I'll just frog it and I'll do something different. Because I didn't think that holding the single was going to be a good fabric between the two. But I think the density of the white makes up for the lack of density in the pink. I think it stands out pretty well. Hopefully it does on camera as well. It looks pretty good in person. It feels good. I like how it's looking so far. I've never knit mosaic knitting. I understood that it was like knits and slip stitches, but I didn't totally understand how it worked, but now I do. I didn't knit a swatch because I was like, I don't even know how to knit mosaic. So how am I gonna knit a mosaic swatch? I'll just start the pattern and see how it goes. Plus it's a shawl. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So it's kind of like, if you've never knit mosaic, it's like garter stitch intertwined, because you're knitting like 2 rows of one color so that you're back on the original spot, and then you're knitting 2 rows of the contrast color, and like back and forth and back and forth. It's looking good so far. It's been pretty fun. Yeah, I like this. It's cool. If I get to the end of the pink yarn and it's really small, I may use another yarn to finish it. If I get to the end of the pink yarn, I feel like it's a good size, then I'll just stop. We'll see when we get there. We're not far enough in yet to make that determination. So yeah, I was a little worried about the white being the main color, but I think it looks fine. I'm really happy with it. It's very pretty. And that is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in like more frequent day-to-day updates of what I'm working on or whatever, you can find me on Instagram at granola.gear. I don't post as much on the grid, but I like to post things on my stories, and sometimes I do polls about like, what should I use? What should I knit next? Because I'm not good at making decisions always. Sometimes I really know. Sometimes I get caught between a couple of things. So if you're interested in that, you can find me there. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. It means so much to me that all you guys have joined me on this journey. It's the most fun. I love just blabbing about knitting, if you can't tell. But I hope you have a great day and happy knitting.